May 9th, no funny introductions today. A somber ClipperBlog Live. Our usual panel of guests from Brooklyn, Charlie Widows. In Los Angeles, Jordan Heimer. And from Oceanside, DJ Foster. DJ, put some words to that shaking face. Explain what happened.
You just felt like all the bad feelings from, the days where we talked about curses came rushing back, when Blake Griffin fell to the floor. Luckily, he was able to get back and return, but he was obviously hobbled, obviously limping throughout the rest of the game. I don't think he elevated once off that knee. Brave, courageous, gutsy, all that stuff for coming back in. Probably stupid for doing it too. I don't think it was worth the risk at that point. And then Chris Paul re-injures his groin, and he can't do anything out on the court when he tries to go back out there, and he ends up not finishing the game. It's scary. So much of the playoffs is momentum, and you feel like Memphis smells blood in the water because there is blood in the water. The Clippers' two best players are banged up and hurt. We don't know about their availability. We assume they'll play, but by no means are they going to be at 100% strength. So as far as the mental battle goes, advantage Memphis heading back home to LA for the Clippers.
Yeah, look, even before those injuries at the end, I was thinking this was a game where a lot of carriages turned back into pumpkins, A lot of things that seemed unsustainable in terms of getting huge games from Reggie Evans without being taken advantage of by the bigger Memphis bigs and getting huge shooting nights from the Foys and Nick Youngs. They were all falling apart today anyway, and they weren't getting good looks, and Memphis was all over them. And then those injuries at the end, you're talking about two players that depend on explosiveness and quickness, and letting Chris Paul check himself back into the game. This may turn out to be that 20/20 hindsight where it's like it's all well and good to have him be the coach, but you don't want to let him be the trainer. And for those few possessions that Chris Paul is out there, he was hobbled. As Arnovitz tweeted, it's bad when he's calling for Mo to defend ball, and you have to be really concerned about it.
Yeah. The injuries are obviously the story going forward. I thought the way that the game was unfolding before was kind of not what you would hope. I think a lot of people kind of figured they could lose this one back in Memphis, but it just didn't really seem like they were prepared mentally. All those technical fouls in the first half, especially, it seemed like their bigs were just the Memphis bigs were just beating the Clippers up the court for easy buckets, that kind of stuff. That you could see a loss, you could see a home court kind of carrying Memphis, but the way it was happening just wasn't. It didn't set the right tone. And so now you think, well, okay, if they could lose this one, then why can't they lose the next one? And then it's, the series is no longer as assured as I thought it was when I was saying bring on the Spurs. Andrew.
Yeah, that's man, if Chris Paul and Blake Griffin are even at 90% for the next game, and that would be a big if right there. I'm not even sure with them at 90% that the Clippers win Game 6 at Staples, but I can't believe that Vinny left Blake in that third quarter when he came back out and shot those free throws, and strategically that's the right decision to make, because if he doesn't shoot those free throws, he can't come back into the game. But how do you leave him in there for the rest of that quarter when you're not entirely sure what's wrong with his knee? DJ, I saw you tweet out something like, you have to get him out of that game.
He's your franchise. He's your franchise player. You don't risk stuff like that without having extensive time to look at him and have him test it out. If he can walk, okay, send him to the free throw line, have him shoot his 2 free throws, and then intentional foul and get him out of the game. I was screaming for them just to wrap up, get the foul, get him out of the game. I didn't get that. I thought, going back to this, and I wanted to go over this, that the Memphis fans, we can call it, a boy who cried wolf situation, but the Memphis fans booing Blake Griffin as he was down on the ground for an extended period of time was one of the more classless things I think I've seen in a long time in the NBA. There were some people clapping. The majority of the fans were booing without knowing the severity of the injury. We didn't see that with Derrick Rose getting hurt or anything like that. I think that might have been at home, but it's just stuff you don't see. It reminds me of Michael Irvin's situation when he was laying unconscious on the field and Eagles fans are, cheering their butts off because he's unconscious. It's just classless. I couldn't believe that.
Yep. Daniel Bain tweeted us that the flopping out accusations have gone too far when a player gets booed when he's hurt and is blamed for it because he flops. So maybe this whole Stop the Flop campaign is getting a little out of control, snowballing.
Look, this is something that actually Charlie and I can, I think, really speak to this in a personal way. This is something I wrote about on ClipperBlog when the Jason Smith injury happened in New Orleans. And I'm sure you guys remember it. Jason Smith, flagrant foul, tackled Blake and kind of whipped people up with a WWF, this style motion on the way off the court, and the crowd is going nuts. And to me, it was the first time I realized Blake has become a despised player. And that's a different thing than being a disliked player. I'm talking about a very select group of players that is LeBron James, Kevin Garnett in certain places, Kobe Bryant in certain places. And it has gone to that place, DJ, where fans lose all sense of these people as humans or as employees or as athletes, and it becomes this really crazy mental flip where it's real hatred in a way that is strange. I don't know, strange and frightening to see to an athlete that you root for and kind of see as slightly human.
It's too far. It's way too far.
Sorry, that was my Skip Bayless rant for the Shame on you, Memphis. Shame on you.
Yeah.
Charlie, break down for us what you saw in that first quarter, maybe the entire first half. What adjustments did Memphis make? They looked much better than in the previous 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Randolph was different tonight. He was a shot maker, as they say in the analysis world. He went to work, and Gasol went to work, and he had a little bit of space, a little bit more than he had the last few games. But I thought those. I mean, they shot 6 3-pointers the whole game. Memphis. They were just getting everything from those 2 guys and working through that, which is we've seen it. That's how it works. And again, I thought the Clippers gave up some easy buckets in transition. Those kind of buckets that are up for grabs, where the player who runs hardest or wants it more will get it. I mean, that's the way it seemed to start for me. And then just so many jump shots. It was Foy, it was Karan at the beginning, and if there's any formula where the Clippers are going to lose to the Memphis Grizzlies, who aren't particularly versatile on offense, it's by giving up easy buckets and then not working for good looks on their end.
Yeah, the Grizzlies got back to the thing that they do best, getting just the ball in the post or Randolph and Gasol and letting them kind of go to work. And the Clippers weren't able to do what they do best, in that Paul couldn't really split pick and rolls or get any sort of deep penetration. It didn't help that guys like Randy Foy were hesitating. But yeah, it was a lot of jumpers. Grizzlies scored 24 points in the paint in the first quarter. For a long period of time, they had more points in the paint than the Clippers had points. I mean, DeAndre Jordan, we make excuses for him, but 18 minutes, 0 rebounds. And while he was out there, Gasol and Randolph went crazy. Yeah, Blake's responsible too, but as the defensive anchor, that's your one thing. You defend and rebound, and he couldn't do either in his time. It's just a complete waste of time on the floor. It killed the Clippers, honestly. It put them in a hole too big to crawl out of, even though they pulled within 2 possessions. That early points in the paint, just barrage from Memphis, took them out of it.
DJ, Reggie was a lot more ineffective on Memphis's post players tonight. Did you notice him doing anything differently or them doing anything to adjust to what he was doing?
I just think they're fighting through it more. And they went to Gay less. But it's interesting. During that comeback in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, you didn't see a lot of post entries. It was a lot of Mike Conley dribbling it out up top, way up top, and doing pick and rolls or ISO stuff. They really got away from feeding the posts. And it's crazy with Memphis. In the fourth quarter, they have a tendency to do that. They just hone in on one thing, whether it's Rudy Gay ISO or Mike Conley pick and roll, and don't diversify at all or go back to the things that work for them. So I don't know. I don't think Reggie did a bad job. I thought he did okay, maybe denying those passes and making it a little bit tougher. But you can't get that from DeAndre Jordan and expect to be okay. That's just too big of a hole.
Jordan, there is a Twitter question for you from Jonathan Ng. How come Bledsoe and Young played 6 and 8 minutes respectively?
I have no explanation for that. Nick Young, okay, he was ineffective. He threw up a few of those kind of classic Nick Young shots. Ironically, because I think the tide had just started to turn and the articles were just starting to be written about how, you know, Nick Young really does understand systematic basketball. I have no idea. I mean, I can only assume that Vinny was upset about that technical foul that Bledsoe got in the first half because he didn't see the court again after that tech. You know, that tech itself was kind of a mysterious situation. Bledsoe ran into a shooter. It was obviously a foul. He was called for a foul. He wasn't called for a flagrant, and he kind of threw the ball up in the air, and he was called for a tech, and Vinny never put him back on the court. Obviously, it seems like a bizarre time to make a point, and I really don't know if Vinny spoke to that in the post-game press conference. Did any of you guys see that?
I didn't see him talk about it.
I was crying, so no.
But yeah, I assume they're related, but maybe I'm making up causality here.
Charlie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's I don't know. You know, the other thing is he tends to be kind of inconsistent with his lineups, so I don't know. Maybe he forgot about him or wanted 3-point shooters out there or something. But it just, again, you know, I thought about this during the game, you know, and we're always quick to assign blame to Vinny Del Negro, and I think, frankly, he deserves a lot of it. But how do you come out here and let your team in a game where you could move on to the second round get that many technical fouls, and you get a technical foul? I just don't get it. I mean, that's
5 technicals, I think.
5 technical fouls in a very important playoff game. That, you know, something has to be really wrong, and I don't think the refs were being unfair to the Clippers tonight. You know, it's not like there was a point to be made, in my opinion. You know, you don't. I understand sometimes you need to, you know, if one of your stars is getting, you need to back him up if he's getting unfairly treated or something. But you know, at one point, like 2 guys got, Mo and Del Negro both got called for technicals. Like, don't you only need one of those to back up Chris Paul? Or, you know, I just didn't understand that, and I think that does reflect on Vinny. And then the Bledsoe thing, you know, obviously I love what he does for the team, and I think we all recognize what his weaknesses are. But how do you play him so few minutes? I mean, this series is tailor-made for him when he plays that style of basketball. He plays defense and he runs, which is what the Clippers need to do to compete with Memphis. I don't get it. I didn't get any of that tonight.
Yeah, if Randy Foye is hesitating and trying to beat people off the dribble, get him out of the game. He's there to shoot. If he's not shooting, get him out of the game. For me, it's that simple. If he doesn't pull the trigger, you just got to pull him. You got to go with someone who can give you something else somewhere else on the floor.
So let's say that Chris Paul isn't 100% on Friday, or even worse, he doesn't play at all. One way or another, let's assume that there are going to have to be more non-Chris Paul minutes being played by the guards. How would you guys handle this? I mean, what rotation would you run? Would you play Bledsoe as your starting point and basically have him be, you know, walk the ball up and play defense?
No, you do the opposite of that. You have him push the ball really fast, and you don't run a half-court offense, and you rely on one of Nick Young, Randy Foye, and Mo Williams to shoot.
But is it Bledsoe at point guard, not Mo Williams, not Mo and Randy?
I think in New York, when Chris Paul sat with that groin, Bledsoe was the starter for that game, and they kept Mo off the bench. So if history is any indicator, then it would probably be Bledsoe. The thing I don't understand, though, is we've heard Vinny in post-game conferences in the past say that he wanted to leave Bledsoe out there because of his foot speed on Connolly and things like that. When Chris Paul is clearly hobbled by his groin, why wouldn't you have Bledsoe in there checking Connolly so that Chris Paul doesn't have to do anything and you can kind of hide him on defense? And Paul is definitely the most consistent shooter of all the wings, and Mo was kind of hot, kind of not. You were living by Mo and dying by Mo there in the fourth. So I don't really understand what anyone was doing with Bledsoe sitting on that bench because he was frustrated for a minute. Just so weird.
I can't buy that. I cannot assume that in a game where 3 other people got technicals, and then the fourth being Vinny, I can't believe that he's really teaching a lesson that it's not okay to get technical fouls. It just doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm not in the
locker room. Say,
I don't know.
You're totally right. That does seem ridiculous. On the other hand, while the rotations have gotten pushed and pulled, this is the first time we haven't seen Eric Bledsoe in the second
Right.
half. I mean, that's a rotation spot that he has as the end of the third quarter every game.
Right.
Yeah, I can't think of the possible adjustment you make why you would leave him out. It's not like, I mean, Mo Williams, yeah, he was shooting well, and when they came back, like Andrew said, they started to, die as his jumpers missed. But Foy, I mean, why?
Although I do just want to point out, we as a ClipperBlog community tend to be almost Eric Bledsoe fetishists. Like, we'll have these games where there are so many things you could break down that the Clippers did wrong in this game, and I just think it's so funny that we end up spending like 6 to 8 minutes just on Bledsoe. Like, it's all about
right.
What about Trey Tompkins?
I blame that guy. I blame that guy right there.
Yeah. Anyway.
No, I mean, listen, we all know what he does well and what he doesn't do well, but 6 minutes, and it's just so connected to the technical. To me, it's like that was such a story. Not literally the 6 foul shots they get, which I don't think were helpful, but the fact that it was clearly a loss of composure.
Okay, so what else went wrong? What are we missing? What else went wrong, Jordan?
Well, I mean, it was back to not back to the future. I guess just back to the past. I mean, we were back to that first half from Game 1, where when the Grizzlies were running their offense, by throwing in those extra post-ups, they were really dominating in the paint, and the Clippers didn't have any answers for that. DJ was ineffective. Reggie Evans was getting bodied by Zach Randolph the way that kind of logically he should have been the whole series. And on the offensive end, the Clippers weren't able to get any of their half-court sets, and it was back to that feeling of these guys are too quick, too big, our shooters aren't agile enough, and it was just so funny to me how in a half of basketball I went from feeling like, hey, we've got a bunch of great, role players who each know how to do a thing, to feeling like none of these guys are good enough to win a series against this team.
Yeah, but despite all of that, the Clippers still pulled within 6 with like 5 or 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, despite how bad everything went. And I know on TNT they were openly wondering, like, is this just the formula they're going to do again? They went down more than 20 points and they're going to come back and win this game. And you could hear it in the televised broadcast how quiet that Memphis arena was.
All true, but that's not a great formula.
No, it's a terrible formula. It's the only one we got, though, Jordan.
Yeah. Hey, it's an even worse formula when Chris Paul isn't at full strength, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 10-10, Jordan's got to go. We're going to cut this one off short.
I couldn't throw in that extra comment or that awkward pause because I'm out.
I'm the king of awkward pauses.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, later, guys.
Yeah, I'm just looking over these team stats, and it's not terrible comparative to some of these previous games in this series. The Clippers were out-rebounded again, but it wasn't a huge amount. The assist totals, the blocks, the turnovers. It seems like it was just Gasol initiating all that action in the first half that threw the Clippers entirely off. DJ, what do you think?
Yeah, he was just so much more aggressive, and he finally woke up and realized that, he has the mismatch in this series, and they went away from Rudy Gay. Rudy Gay did nothing in the first half. I don't know how many points he scored. It couldn't have been more than 4 or 6. They got back to what they do. It's curious that they went away from it, though, in the fourth, and it's almost like, shh, don't tell Lionel Hollins that they can go and just get whatever they want in the post. I thought Vinny made a good adjustment by going zone in little stretches, and I'm kind of glad he kept it in the back pocket and didn't use it extensively, even though it turned out to be a winnable game. You don't want Memphis figuring that out when that may be your key go-to at home in Game 6. So I'm glad he didn't overuse the zone. If they can somehow keep the ball out of the post, whether that's fronting now or they stayed glued to Gasol, but he did a lot less work in the high post than he did of just straight posting up, and that makes it tough. He's a tough guy to get around in front. So when it feels like Memphis is back in control of this series, that if they do what they can do, they could win, but they got to do it for all 4 quarters, and we haven't seen that yet. So I don't know. It's as tight as that. It comes down to those last few possessions once again.
Charlie,
Yeah.
going back to this zone thing for a moment. Memphis is widely acknowledged as not a very good perimeter shooting team. What is stopping the Clippers from just sitting in a zone for the whole game and daring them to shoot lights out like they did in the first half of Game 1?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I'd ask DJ this. I agreed that it was a great kind of a change of pace at the time when Memphis was really rolling. But I don't know if it's a sustainable kind of long-term thing. I mean, I think Memphis isn't a great three-point shooting team, but they also tend to know their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, they only shot 6 three-pointers tonight. They know that if Conley's not getting open looks and OJ is not getting great open looks, they're not just going to shoot threes that don't go in. I don't know, DJ. I mean, do you think this is like I think the Clippers have been actually they've used the zone pretty effectively throughout the year in spurts, but I don't know if it's a sustainable thing.
No, and I don't think any zone defense in the NBA
Right.
is fully sustainable. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. Too many guys are too talented and can hit open shots. Like I saw at halftime, the TNT crew was showing how they had Randy Foye in the bottom of a 2-3 and how Memphis was failing to exploit it. But the shots that they showed were pretty good shots. It was a Conley floater that he usually makes, and a wide-open 16-footer for Dante Cunningham, which I'm guessing he can hit. I'm not a Dante Cunningham expert, but I mean, when Memphis plays that aggressive, though, and they look exclusively to feed their bigs, it just throws off the rhythm, and it's not sustainable, but it's something that absolutely we need to see in Game 6 if they come out rolling like that again. It just throws them off the rhythm. If nothing else, it slows them down and makes guys start to think instead of react. That's the best thing about a zone, is it makes players think instead of just going out and making plays. Now they're looking and seeing where the defense is, and it just completely throws guys off the rhythm. So we have to see that zone in Game 6.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention these tweets that Nick Flint has been posting, saying, please mention that the starting lineup was ineffective once again, and he's not a believer in single game plus-minus, but Karan's plus-minus of -23 was totally accurate for the game. And I guess this is just after he posted that beautiful apology to Karan.
Didn't Yeah, I learned my lesson. I wish I could share my knowledge with you, young Nick Flint. Don't apologize to Karan, because then he's just going to go on a terrible stretch of basketball. Just let Karan be Karan. I thought, at least in the starting lineup, it wasn't Rudy Gay hurting Karan.
Right. No, I think Karan's thing was offensively. He just was hoisting up horrible jump shots for the beginning.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with jump shooters, right? It's what we see in Mo Williams in the span of 2 minutes, we see with Caron Butler game to game. I mean, either he's got it and then he doesn't have it. It's just, you live or die with it.
Yeah.
Go to sleep, Nick.
Yeah.
I guess I should give a shout out to Bongstradamus in the comment section of ClipperBlog.
Oh yeah, that's my boy.
He had made a comment under everyone's comments about the apologizing to Karan, saying, "I bet you're gonna regret apologizing." I'm like, why? What happened? And clearly, Bongstradamus is just like his namesake. He saw what was gonna happen tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Karan, and I think DJ, first of all, when you wrote the apology, A, he was playing much better for a sustained period of time, and B, it was kind of on a macro level. I mean, we were just, and you especially, were just really, really against the signing at all. I mean, there was no value to it, and it turned out, sure, there was some value to it. I mean, he was a passable small forward for the year, and which meant he had the capability of really having some good games, and for a while that was kind of like he would come out hot and hit a few jumpers in the beginning of games, and that really stretched the floor, and it was a bigger kind of thing. I don't think we're going to find out anything new or about Caron Butler anymore in his career, in a good way. I don't think he's going to pleasantly surprise. he's still the guy who's capable of having a big quarter, no question. And he gives a good effort, and in the playoffs, he really wants to give it his all, and he fights. But he's not different.
He's tough. He's always been tough. He's
Right.
a grown-up. He's, a professional guy. He takes shots. He knows his role is to shoot. So he takes those shots when he gets them. He doesn't pass it up. But honestly, he doesn't bring a whole lot else. I don't know if that's worth the money that he got.
No. No one, I think, would argue that, hopefully.
Right, but it was like I said in my recap the other night, it was just a sign to Chris Paul that, hey, we're serious, and
Right.
it was, a guy who will come in and you know what you're getting from him. I mean, you don't know if the shots are going to fall or not, obviously, but everything else, you know what you're getting from him.
Right. DJ, question for you. Clearly, Karan was ineffective tonight, and Foy played some at the 3 when they went to that 3-guard lineup. We're going to put him aside as well. Who would you rather have seen in the second half, Bobby Simmons or Nick Young, get absorb most of this Karan minutes?
Nick Young.
Nick Young.
Yeah,
Charlie,
it's
what about you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm a kind of a believer in just some continuity. I mean, the fact that we're going to look back on this series and Bobby Simmons will have started one game and not played in others is I think it's going to be pretty significant just in terms of how unstable the rotation is in general.
Bobby Simmons wasn't terrible in game 2, though.
No, I agree. But
Yeah.
I totally agree. He was good, in fact, for what they asked of him. But it's weird. That's why, again, not to go back to it, but we talk about guys like Bledsoe. You can kind of just put him in, and whether he's played a lot the game before or not, he's going to do what he's going to do. And I think Nick Young's kind of that same kind of thing, where he's going to look for his offense and he's going to be long.
I think we're making a big fuss over the lineups and the rotations when really Chris Paul had one of his worst first halves of the season. He couldn't do anything. And Blake was pretty bad defensively again. He kind of reverted back to his old ways after a better effort in Game 4. He got beat up the floor by Gasol at least 3 or 4 times for easy layups and, didn't get back in transition and all that sort of thing. So,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, we could just seen a couple different changes, a couple different rotations, a couple of guys play more minutes, whatever. When Blake and Chris don't play like they should in the first half, it's going to be tough to win.
So bring this all the way back around. Charlie, if Chris Paul, I don't know, I can't call him by his first name.
Not on a first name basis?
I should be saying Mr. Paul and Mr. Griffin, but I'm not going to give them that respect. If Chris Paul and Blake Griffin are not at 100%, how close to it do they have to be for the Clippers to win Game 6? Charlie?
I don't know. I think we've said this 1,000 times. These Clippers could do anything, and it wouldn't surprise me. I really would. Any of these guys could get hot, like we talked about.
You really think that? Let's say that Blake and Chris Paul and Blake Griffin don't play Game 6. There's a possibility that the Clippers could win.
If they don't play, no, I think that would be very unlikely. I really do. But again, like what you were saying, Chris Paul again had a very bad first half, at least, just like he did in Game 1. And as you said, Blake Griffin gave up buckets that Kenyon Martin, Reggie Evans, whoever it is, anyone who hustles back on D and doesn't let Marc Gasol get easy layups wouldn't give up. So there are certain things that you don't have to be Superman to prevent in the next game. I think Paul, especially if he can play at 70%, is still going to be crafty, smart Chris Paul, who is going to find ways to either get to the line or get guys open or make his own shots. If Blake strikes me as the kind of guy that if he's not physically able, he might be tough because he's not doing the little things really, other than I guess Game 4. So that I think that he'd need to be right physically.
You guys want glass half empty or glass half full?
I want both.
Yeah. You want both? All right. Well, glass half empty, I think you look at it like this. You know what? I forgot glass half empty, so I'm going to go with glass half full.
There we go. Green glass half empty.
Boom. Optimism. You know, the positives from this game, everything broke for Memphis pretty much exactly the way they would want to, right? They got Randolph and Gasol back on track after they looked pretty much they looked dead in the first few games. And they have them back on track, roaring, ready to go for Game 6. Paul and Griffin got hurt. They have all the momentum. All they have to do is steal one. They're headed back home court Game 7. That's the good news for the Grizzlies. I'm very confused with the half-full, half-empty thing. Should probably stay away from that in the future. Don't let me forget that. If you look at it the other way, Chris Paul played terribly in the first half. Couldn't do anything. Couldn't create for others. I'm pretty sure he only had 2 assists to like 2 or 3 turnovers in the first half. Was 2 for 7 from the field. Wasn't getting to the line. He was awful. Blake Griffin wasn't much better. We already talked about it. Defensively, he was a mess. Offensively, all his stuff was on putbacks or, transition opportunities. He wasn't getting anything done in the half court. And the Clippers still, somehow, with their 2 players hurt, pull it within 2 possessions in the fourth quarter because the Grizzlies have no idea what they want to do in the clutch, right? So that's the positive news heading into Game 6, is that even when everything goes wrong through the first 3 quarters, they're getting nothing from Foy, nothing from Young. Reggie's doing nothing. DeAndre is terrible. No one really had a good game through 3 quarters. It was as bad as it could get.
Terrible. I mean, he was in the Trillion Club tonight.
I know. 18 minutes, no rebounds. That's how bad it was. And they pulled within 2 possessions. So if you can get Chris Paul, if you can get Blake Griffin to do something in the first 3 quarters to play defense, if you can get a contribution from someone else, the Clippers definitely have a chance in the fourth quarter of this next game in Game 6, right? I think that's the positive spin. I saw you spinning a lot today on Twitter, Andrew. You're very spinny today.
Well, there's no choice. You can't just put the facts up as it is. It's like a huge stinky egg on Twitter. You have to spin it one way.
I think that's a good way of describing Twitter. A huge stinky egg.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask for predictions for Game 6 because
thank you.
These Chris Paul, Blake Griffin injuries are just too big a deal.
I think they're going to play. The one thing I just wanted to say on Twitter, it just said, I guess Kevin and a bunch of other people said, it's now a strained hip flexor for Paul.
Oh, wow.
Which I had one of those in college, and it was...
Were you able to play the next game and win the series?
I was able to play, but for some reason the coach did not think it was still the best decision to put me in there. It was definitely
lost because
why he said that.
Yeah.
A responsible coach. What's that like?
Yeah.
Okay. So, is there anything else you guys want to say? It seems like that's a slight I don't know if that's an improvement or not. Re-aggravating your groin or a strained hip flexor. But it's something else, so I guess that's something to be happy about. Any last comments, Charlie?
No, I think I'd like to say goodnight to everyone.
That's sweet. No, I'm going to take Charlie's lead and say goodnight to everyone. We'll see you Game 6, Friday. Early start. Try and leave work early, because Friday traffic is not fun for
that's right.
Los Angeles folks.
Heard that.
Please don't clog the 110-10 interchange.
Yes. God. Tell your boss you have a doctor's appointment at like 3 tomorrow. It won't look suspicious if you do it that way. Gotcha.
So, for DJ Foster, Charlie Widows, I'm Andrew Hahn. Thanks for tuning in.